Hi, fourth years. So when I'm saying you've got to write an essay, what I generally mean is a 5-paragraph essay like this. Okay, we'll talk about the introduction again and the conclusion, but what we really want to look at is paragraph 2, 3, and 4. As you can see, they have point, evidence, evaluation, which rather rudely is can be summed up as P. So what do I mean by point? So point is when whatever the question is, choose a poem about love. You're making a point about love. Well, Blake clearly loves the rose in the poem. That would be your point. That would be your kind of take on it. Okay. Evidence just is a fancy word for quote. And evaluation is if you say in, for example, so now the question is, choose a poem which looks at love. And you're saying, well, this poem is about love because he loves Rose, right? That's your point. And then you've given me a quote. In that quote, show me where the love is then. So even if it's really obvious, like, oh, Rose, thou art sick. The word oh, you'd have to say in your evaluation, oh is really affectionate. Oh is one of those words which shows that Blake really thinks highly of Rose. I mean, even calling her Rose is a thing of beauty and very precious. So we can see here that Blake loves Rose. Now that might seem really obvious. Oh, Rose, that's sick. Why am I pointing out the obvious? You have to get marks for the evaluation. So never assume I know why you've picked a quote. You have to make it really, really obvious. So that is what I'm asking you to do today, is plan paragraph 2, 3, and 4 when you tackle a question. Okay, so excuse my fingers while I turn over. I'm just going to talk you through a question that I've chosen for myself. Now, I've written this up all on the OneNote, but I wanted you to see how I actually approached it. So here's my question. This is not your question, by the way. This is one I've planned out for myself. And it's all written up in the table in the OneNote. So choose a poem which you find memorable. By referring to appropriate techniques, explain why you found the poem memorable. So first thing I'd say to do is underline the word that is the key word. So this poem has to be all about being memorable. Okay, so when I'm checking to see whether this is the right question for me, because you will get 2 questions on poetry, I think to myself, do I know what memorable is? So memorable, and I think, can I define it in my head? Right. Memorable is when something stands out. Now, does anything stand out in this poem? Bearing in mind I have a 5-paragraph essay, I'm going to need to have 3 quotes about something memorable. So first of all, memorable is something that stands out. How can I apply it to this essay or this poem? Things stand out because they're quite violent and dramatic in this poem. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. It's memorable because it's violent and dramatic. And I'm going to think of 3 quotes. Can I think of 3 quotes? If the answer is no, then don't pick the question. Choose the other question. So it's like a wee test. If you can only think of 1 quote, oh my goodness, it's going to be a heck of a short essay. You're not going to do very well. You need 3 quotes for a 5-paragraph essay. So paragraph 2, 3, and 4. Have I got a quote? Right, it's memorable because, what did I say? It's memorable because things stand out because there's lots of danger. Right, so I'm going to choose, oh, Rose, thou art sick. And I'm going to look at, because they're asking me for appropriate techniques. I don't want to just not put any of the fancy English words that I know. I want to have 3 different ones. So I'm going to be looking at word choice. I'm going to be talking about the word rose, oh, Rose and sick. I'm going to be talking, it's memorable because he loves her, yet there's this warning of doom, this death that's coming. That's what makes it memorable, the kind of dramatic contrast between loving her and warning her. Right, anything else that's memorable? Well, this invisible worm's pretty memorable. Why? Because it's a metaphor, meaning it's not just a worm, it actually means something else, and it's a metaphor for evil ideas, devil's ideas in the revolution. It's also an evil, this link to sex, the phallus, invisible worm that she doesn't realise that is going to destroy her. That's pretty memorable. So this kind of danger again. So it's memorable because it's danger and the violence in that again. So I'm really writing a kind of violence essay, but I've always gone back to explain it's memorable because of its dramatic warnings. And finally, I'm going to talk about Crimson Joy. Okay, now I've looked at word choice here, I've looked at metaphor here. So in Crimson Joy, I'm going to look at maybe joy and destroy. I'm going to look at rhyme. I'm going to say it's memorable because, again, crimson suggests to me blood and red and danger, and joy are brought together. So that's really memorable. It kind of like you don't understand it at first, but then you think about it, like, why would it be joyful to have a revolution? Why would it be joyful for somebody in a rape situation? Why would it be joyful for a woman to have a consensual sexual relationship, lose her innocence, and yet it be joyful? These opposites ideas are coming together, and they're really memorable because, again, there's a warning in them, and the warning comes to the rhyme. So in this one, I'm thinking to myself, it's my last paragraph 4 before the conclusion. I'm going to put my most difficult ideas in, and I'm going to talk about how, yes, William Blake thinks there's temptation in certain things, but it's memorable because he also hints at a consequence, the destroying part of it, destroying society or destroying Rose, and that is delivered through not only the contrast between joy and crimson and joy, but also joy and destroy. So kind of looking at two things there, the contrast and the rhyme. So again, to go back to the essay, my advice is to go in order of, to go in order of the poem. So paragraph 2 is an early quote, 3 later quote, and paragraph 4 is a final quote, because as the poem gets more hard, doesn't it, as it goes on? And so your ideas should start off fairly easy and get more complicated as they go on, because that is a good way to order your essay. It's really tough. Please try your best, but don't worry if bits are confusing. That is where it's only our first shot at it, okay? And this will get more and more understandable. Even if you pick up 1 or 2 things about the essay from this learning, experience, next time we come at it to revise it, you might pick up a few more meanings. And then finally, on your third go, perhaps you'll understand everything. So just persevere with it, be patient with yourself. Okay, bye-bye, folks.